Good evening. Today, we transitioned from search and rescue to recovery. We need to bring a sense of closure and comfort to the families, and we take that very seriously. And to all the families, I say, estamos contigo, ahora y siempre. Less than an hour after the collapse, we had divers in the water at 2:25 a.m. to begin search and rescue. This morning, we had divers in the water starting at 6 a.m. for search and recovery. This is not a conclusion. It's a continuation. And we take this phase just as seriously and just as personally as we took the last phase. And I want to thank, as always, all of our first responders, the Maryland State Police, the Coast Guard, the Natural Resources Police, Baltimore City Police Departments, and Baltimore County, Baltimore City, and Prince George's County Fire Departments, and everybody who was involved inside of this work. Now, I can tell you over these past days, we have heard an outpouring of thoughts and prayers coming in from all around the world. For Baltimore, for Maryland, for the victims, and for their families. And to everybody who is sending out those prayers, I want to say that we have felt them, and we've been comforted by them. To everybody who has shared kind words, we want to say that we appreciate the words and the kind gestures that you have shown. And we also want to let everybody know this, that going forward, we're also going to need your support. The collapse of the Key Bridge is not just a Maryland crisis. The collapse of the Key Bridge is a global crisis. The national economy and the world's economy depends on the Port of Baltimore. The port handles more cars and more farm equipment than any other port in the country. Last year alone, the port handled $80 billion of foreign cargo, the largest in the country. Now, in the last 24 hours, that we've had a chance to work with the Navy to mobilize major resources all around to be able to make sure that we are getting things moving, and this has happened at record speed. And I was informed that they are still assessing the area and organizing with a thorough plan of action. This afternoon, I also had the chance to meet with the Maryland Department of Transportation and my executive team and all the leaders there. And we talked about how we are going to continue to mobilize assets at all levels of government and society to make sure that we are moving forward collectively with our response. Today also, Maryland submitted our request to the Biden-Harris administration asking for emergency relief funds to assist in our work going forward. And I had the opportunity to speak to the president again today by phone. I'm thankful also that we're here joined by Tom Perez, who I know is also going to share words later on. And Tom, it's wonderful to see you here, and thank you for the continued support and work. So the thing we know is this. I do not know at this point what the total costs are going to be. I do not yet know what the full timeline is going to be. But the thing that I do know is that the task in front of us, it will be real. It will be daunting. But despite this task ahead of us being daunting, I can tell you right now, our resolve is unshaken. We will get to completion. We will do it together. This work will take time, but we're going to make sure that we are going to leave no one behind. We are going to take care of our people. At least 8,000 workers on the docks have jobs that have been directly affected by the collapse. We need to make sure we're supporting them in this moment, and we need to make sure that we are getting them back on the job. And the same goes for many others that have been affected by this crisis, both directly and indirectly. We are going to move forward together because that's what we do. Because we are Maryland tough and Baltimore strong. I will now turn it over to Colonel Butler from the Maryland State Police for updates.
Thank you, Governor. I'm Colonel Roland L. Butler, Jr., Superintendent of the Maryland Department of State Police. This morning, as the Governor said, we moved from search and rescue to search and recovery. The Maryland State Police, along with the underwater recovery teams, supported by state, local, and federal partners, made a tragic finding. Shortly before 10 a.m., divers located a red pickup truck submerged in approximately 25 feet of water in the area of the middle span of the bridge. Divers recovered two victims of this tragedy trapped within the vehicle. The victims were identified as Alejandro Hernandez Fuentes, 35 years old, of Baltimore, and Dorlian Ranial Castillo Cabrera, 26 years old, of Dundalk. Their family members were notified just over an hour ago in person by Maryland State Police personnel with crisis intervention personnel present. Knowing the gravity of this, we've provided them with a list of resources that they can refer to and refer their friends and family to. At this point, based upon the conditions, we're now moving from a recovery mode to a salvage operation. Because of the superstructure surrounding the vehicle, what we believe are the vehicles, and the amount of concrete and debris, divers are no longer able to safely navigate or operate around that. We have exhausted all search efforts in the areas around this wreckage, and based on sonar scans, we firmly believe that the vehicles are encased in the superstructure and concrete that we tragically saw come down. At this point, as this moves to a salvage recovery effort, the Maryland State Police will continue to support the Unified Command as the salvage assessment phase takes place, and the U.S. Coast Guard will brief you additional information regarding what to expect and possibly how long this could take. But I'll tell you now, there's no definitive timeline on this. Please be patient. Please keep the family members in mind. In coordination with our FBI partners, we've determined the countries of origin of those that are presumed deceased to be Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. The notifications to these individuals' family members and loved ones outside of the United States is being handled by the Federal Bureau of Investigation in accordance with their established protocols. Again, I encourage you all to think about these people and those that they love and they lost. They're going to need your love and support. Now hand it off to the Admiral.
Good evening. My name is Rear Admiral Shannon Gilreath. First, I want to say our deepest condolences and sympathy go out to the families of the impacted individuals. I also want to announce that the Coast Guard, along with our federal and state and local agency partners, have stood up a unified command. Our number one priority in that unified command is to reopen the waterway so that we can safely move commerce in and out of the Port of Baltimore. That's our number one priority. We're going to do that as soon as possible and as safely as possible. So that's what we're doing from a unified command perspective. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Paul Wiedefeld, Secretary of Transportation. The entire department's heartbroken to have lost these individuals on one of our facilities. I did want to update you on the efforts that we're doing to move forward with the reconstruction of the bridge. As was mentioned earlier by the governor, we have applied for the dollars, the federal dollars that are available for this type of purpose. I sent a letter earlier this morning. I just got off a phone call with the Federal Highway Administrator on the process that we're moving forward. We intend to receive some additional federal dollars very quickly to start that process, and then we will come up with a design for the replacement of that bridge as quickly as possible to get the port back up and the community back up and running. Thank you.
Senator Ben Cardin, first let me express our deepest condolences to the families of the victims of this horrible tragedy. And I also want to personally thank all the first responders. I had a chance to see firsthand some of the diving activities, and it was extremely challenging, to say the least. And we know that the quick action of our first responders saved lives by keeping vehicles off the bridge before it collapsed. So I really want to congratulate our first responders. When you have a catastrophic event like this that affects transportation infrastructure that's critically important to our community and to our region, the federal government comes to your help. And we are asking the federal government to help us through this crisis. President Biden has responded in a very direct way. We are very confident that we will get the immediate attention that we need, thanks to the Biden administration and our federal partners. We also will need the help of the Congress. Senator Van working with our entire congressional delegation to make sure that we provide the necessary authorization, support, and resources to make this recovery complete, and that we can move as quickly as possible. Make no mistake about it, our top priority is to get the shipping lane open. We recognize that every day it's closed, the impact it has not just on Baltimore and our economy and the state of economy, but in our country, and affects the global supply chain. And we recognize that we have to move with dispatch in regards to opening the channel. We are also working today on a replacement bridge so that we can also have those plans in place and have the tools and resources available so that we can reconstruct the bridge as quickly as possible. First priority, open the shipping lanes, let us replace the bridge, and we appreciate the fact that the federal government will be there every step of the way. Senator Van Hollen.
I want to start where the governor and Senator Cardin and others did by saying to the families of the 6 that we lost in this tragic accident that our hearts go out to you, and we as the Maryland family will do everything we can to provide you with the resources that you need in this very difficult time. It's also a solemn reminder of both the contributions and the sacrifices that our immigrant families make in our community and around the country. And I also want to thank the first responders for, first of all, the search and rescue operation, and now the recovery operation. Thank you all for the hard work that you're doing. As others have said, we have 2 priorities. The most urgent priority is to open up the Port of Baltimore, because as the governor laid out, it is essential to the livelihoods of people here in Baltimore and Maryland, and in fact, the economies of the region, and will impact people around the country and around the world. The Port of Baltimore is that important, and it is the 8,000 people who are working there directly, the tens of thousands of people whose economic livelihood is tied up with the port. So I want to thank the President of the United States, who called many of us yesterday and then spoke to the nation, is already delivering on his promise, which he has ordered the Army Corps of Engineers to do everything necessary to clear the channel so that we can reopen those shipping lanes. We have to open one first, and over a period of time, I think we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that we have ships passing through as soon as possible. The Army Corps of Engineers, the federal government, will pick up the costs for that, and those funds are available. I saw preliminary estimates between $40 and $50 million, but they're very preliminary. But the bottom line is the Army Corps will pick up the costs. I want to commend the governor and his team for their fast action in putting forward the notice that they're going to apply for the federal emergency relief fund, part of the federal Department of Transportation's program, the Federal Highway Administration. We will be working very closely with the governor, Secretary Wiedefeld, and others, and their team as you process that. Just to give you all a sense of what that means, you can draw down funds immediately for some of the costs of diverting traffic and other immediate costs to adjust to what happened in the short term. And then going forward, that relief fund provides a strong federal match. We believe it will be 90-10 in terms of the federal share. For the 10% remainder, Senator Cardin and I will be working very closely with the President and our colleagues in the Congress to make sure that we meet President Biden's pledge to do as much as possible to make sure that the federal government picks up the costs. Some have asked about the ship owners themselves. Obviously, as the NTSB conducts its review, we'll have a better idea of exactly what happened. And if anybody is liable for negligence or wrongdoing, you can be assured that we will be pursuing those funds as part of the cost share. From the congressional point of view, we will be pursuing, as I say, what we hope will be about 10% of the total costs through the legislative process. We will push to make any increases necessary in that emergency federal fund, and again, put forward legislation. Senator Cardin and I are in the process right now of reaching out, putting a phone call into Speaker Johnson because we think that this is something where Americans should come together. This should not be a question of Republicans or Democrats. This is an American challenge. We are a great American city here in Baltimore, and we're hoping that all of our colleagues will come together and join us in making sure we rebuild the bridge, because as the governor said, we do this together, and we hope that will also be true in the United States Congress. So thank you to everybody who's been part of this. I'm now going to turn it over to the mayor of to Tom Perez, another great Marylander who is now at the White House doing wonderful work with the president. Tom Perez.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Tom Perez, and I have the privilege of serving as a senior advisor to President Biden. And President Biden, like the nation, grieves for these victims. And he is no stranger to tragedy in his own family. And Governor, thank you so much for your leadership throughout this challenging situation. It's been steadfast, and it has been remarkable. We are all in this together. When President Biden first heard about this yesterday morning, he summoned everyone who had a relevant stake in the game to come together to make sure that every federal resource was put to bear. So we see the Coast Guard, we see the Army Corps, we see the National Transportation Safety Board, we see the Department of Labor. The President directed us to make sure that we are doing everything possible. Success occurs when everybody is working together. And that's exactly what is happening here. I met with the families earlier today, and it is really, really tragic. And we will get through this. We have no doubt about it. And the President has directed us to move heaven and earth. Those aren't my words, those are his words. To make sure we are helping the remarkable people of the great state of Maryland to move forward. And we will indeed, Governor, I can inform you with confidence that we will process your request promptly because the situation calls for prompt action. Déjame hablar poquito en español porque las víctimas son latinos. Me llamo Tomás Pérez, yo trabajo por el presidente Biden. Hoy es un día muy, muy triste para nuestro estado y nuestro país. Y el presidente entiende bien el sufrimiento de la comunidad. Y el presidente, en la dama primera, las oraciones de ellos son con la familia de las víctimas. Presidente Biden entiende bien la necesidad de construir la puente de construir oportunidad para todos los residentes de Maryland y vamos a trabajar juntos en esta causa. We will continue this work, whether it's the Department of Labor, whether it's our colleagues who are here today. We will do that together because that is what teamwork is about. Thank you for being the captain of the team, Governor, and we will continue to move forward. And speaking of other members of the team, it's an honor to present to you the mayor of the great city of Baltimore, Brandon Scott.
Good evening. First and most importantly, to each of the families, know that my heart and the heart of the entire city of Baltimore is with you and will be with you forever. To every first responder, whether you're from Baltimore Fire, Baltimore Police, Maryland State Police, or the Coast Guard, our county partners, thank you. Thank you for being fearless and selfless and for putting your life at risk to save others, as you did yesterday, today, and each and every day. To Baltimore, we are all hurting, but we must be reminded in this moment that we are Baltimore. The city of Baltimore cannot be broken. We will continue to work with our federal and state partners through this. We will not be broken, but we are asking today also for some patience. As you heard, we will reopen the channel as quickly as possible, but it's just important that it's done the right way. We also, well, this is me, I'm also asking for folks to have a little bit of decency and respect. Don't spread misinformation. Don't play bridge engineer online or in the media. Remember that these are people's family members who lost their lives simply trying to make transit better for the rest of us. We are strong. Our spirit in our city is strong and cannot be broken. We will rebuild and heal the Baltimore way, and that's together. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to the governor.
Thank you all. I'm going to take some questions. Start with Aaron Cox in the front.
Yes, sir. We've heard a lot of reports that the ship had engine failure before it got to port. There were some problems while it was at port. What do you know about the state of the ship as it was pulling out right before it hit that bridge?
We're still under investigation as to what exactly happened. And we don't have a declared answer as to why there was power challenges and power issues. The thing that we do know is that we have documented that there were power challenges as the freight was coming up on the bridge. And when the Mayday call was coming in, the Mayday call came in because of the power issues and the lack of ability to steer the vessel.
Can I follow up?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that and say by power challenges, you mean...
You've been listening to officials in Maryland give an update on the Baltimore bridge collapse. Authorities said that divers recovered the bodies of 2 victims today. They were found inside a red pickup submerged in about 25 feet of water near the bridge's middle span. Maryland Governor Wes Moore said the collapse is not just a crisis for the state, it is a global crisis. He also said the state is asking for emergency relief funds from the Biden administration. They said the search and rescue operation has now moved to recovery and then salvage. And at this point, the #1 priority is to reopen the port. They said the victims of the bridge collapse, the ship going into it. Those men were from Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Natalie Brand joins us now from Maryland. Natalie, do we know any other thing else about when the port might be open, given how important they said it is?
Hey, Jeff. Yeah, well, what we heard time and time again during this news conference is that the timeline still remains unclear. Keep in mind that there's been this very intense recovery effort that's been underway all day, now moving to what they're calling recovery and salvage. But then beyond that, they still have to begin clearing the channel of all the debris and what's left of the bridge. and also the ship, which, as you know, there's still a very intense investigation underway with NTSB investigators on board trying to collect evidence to try to piece together what happened. So as the recovery and investigation continues, then the very difficult work of clearing the channel begins. And we learned today from our David Martin that the Navy is also getting involved and will be mobilizing large barges with cranes to begin to help that process of clearing the channel. Right now, all ship traffic is on hold. And as we know, this is a major port, one of the East Coast's busiest ports, and the #1 port for vehicle imports and exports. That's why there's concern about not only the local impact to the thousands of workers employed directly by the port and the tens of thousands employed indirectly, but also nationally, the ripple effects that will just continue to stem from this.
Okay, Natalie Brand in Maryland joining us. Thank you very much. We'll be right back.